Okay. Welcome everybody to tonight's SDN NYC event, Stories That Stick, using narratives to make design land. Some housekeeping before we get rolling. Of course, I'm David. We've got Barry, who's not here tonight, Yasmin, Nick, Francesco, and Lynn. We're all the organizing leadership team. So if you have any questions or want to say hi or anything, just track us down. Many of you have been here before. I see a lot of familiar faces, but there are a few of you who I think might be new. So just a little bit about us. We are the Service Design Network New York City, New York chapter, I think officially is what, New York Collective. Antonio, what did it originally stand for? Okay, Service Design Collective, New York. Yeah, so we're the New York City chapter of the Service Design Network. We are, our goal is to raise awareness of service design as a practice, and to just facilitate conversation among like-minded or sometimes unlike-minded designers and, and in the service design community. Typically, we try to host events monthly. If we get 9 or 10 out of 12 months, we are pretty successful. You can find those, since you're here, you have found us on likely our meetup. That tends to be where we do most of our communications. We also have a pretty big LinkedIn presence, and we do publish recaps to our Medium page if you ever want to share those or read those. YouTube, we do occasionally post video replays of these talks. This one will be able to, because I actually remembered to hit record. Some of those haven't happened. We have less presence these days on Instagram, and then of course that's our website. If you or someone you know is interested in speaking or presenting or running a workshop or test driving a new framework that you're trying to develop and you want to do that here with us, reach out to any of us. You can meet up, message us. You can connect with us on LinkedIn personally, through the SDN LinkedIn. Come up to us afterwards here. We'd love to have you. Generally, we go for an hour or so. But if you want to have a little bit of presentation and a whole lot of workshop or a whole lot of discussion, or if it's a very interactive thing, that's great too. So tonight you have been meeting and mingling and eating. We're getting ready to start with chai here in just a second. Afterwards, at around 7:30, we'll wind things up. At 8 o'clock, we will leave here and we are moving on to No Bar, which is at the Standard Hotel. Very unofficial. Just if anybody wants to keep the conversation going, if you've just had a long day, whatever, and you want to join us there, a bunch of us will be walking down there afterwards. And that's it. I do want to announce again that in October of this year, we have the Service Design Global Conference. It's going to be in Dallas this year. It'll be roughly 500 people, 13 speakers, I think, if I do my math correctly. There are workshops that are available the day before that you can register and attend. It's a couple social events built in. It's a really great few days of community if you've never been. And of course, this year it's in the States, in Dallas, so very easy to get to. All right, so I'm gonna pull out my notes here, my introduction for chai. and then we'll get her started. Chaitra Rao is a design leader with over 17 years of experience driving human-centric strategies across industries like healthcare, finance, and technology. She is passionate about creating intuitive, impactful experiences that align user needs with business goals, always with collaboration and team success at the core. Beyond her professional work, Chai brings a deep curiosity about human behavior and sees design as a tool to solve not just business problems, but real life challenges. Chai. And we have to take just a minute to switch computers.
Can you hear me? Okay. My voice is pretty loud, but the mic apparently is good for so picks up recording. So if I'm yelling, feel free to raise your hand and tell me not to. Okay, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is my first talk in the Service Design New York chapter, Network's New York chapter. I'm going to try and keep it as interactive as possible, but we'll do a little activity. The way I've structured it is we'll do a little activity in the beginning. Keep this in mind. I'll share a few slides, walk you through a few case studies from my experience, and then we'll end it with another activity. Does that sound okay? Okay, perfect. And there'll be time for Q&A, and I'm going to hang out here even after, so you can always come back and speak to me. Okay, this is a quick, maybe 3 to 4 minute activity. I'll try and see if I can keep time. So think of a recent frustrating service experience or using a digital product or anything. Maybe you were trying to return something, or you were dealing with something with your bank or DMV or immigration or anything, or frustrating, which is a frustrating process, right? Or something at work. You were trying to return something, get something. It works. And turn to the person next to you, like pair up in twos. And for the next 3 minutes, like think about it for a couple of minutes. And once you've thought about it, you can tell that story to your neighbor. Does that sound okay? Okay, maybe we start, I have to figure out how this works. Okay, we'll start with this. So let's take maybe 3 minutes and think of an experience. If you need less than 3 minutes, that's fine. And then find a partner and then tell that story to them. But make sure that you're not jumping to a solution. Don't try solving it. Just tell the story. Tell how you felt. Tell what was frustrating and specific moments where you think it completely failed you. Okay, your 2-3 minutes start now.
Oh yeah, hey.
The activity is up on the board. Find a partner. It's okay even if you can't pick one partner. If you join a group of three, that's fine too. Yeah, just join anybody. Hi, come in. You can grab a name sticker and pick any partner, a group of two or three, and that's the activity. We have another 3 minutes. And then, okay. You're welcome. All right, you have maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. Does it look like most of you are done? Do you need more time? You're done? Okay. I don't want to stop people halfway through.
Life is frustrating.
It's pretty easy, right? Okay. Hopefully, most of you are done. Okay, perfect. Um, thank you for taking part in that activity. Keep the experience that you heard from your partner in mind, right? And just think about this, like, were you able to connect with that person next to you? I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you've met that person before, so they're new or they're a stranger to you. So were you able to connect with their pain point? Were you able to empathize with what they were feeling? And did that experience seem made up or did it seem real to you? Just keep all of this in mind, right? Don't have to share it any right now, but keep this in mind. And the experience, like when you were exploring the stories, we'll come back to this later, but think about this for a minute and then we'll jump to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So this is one of my favorite topics for multiple reasons, and I'll tell you why. And I went through a lot of different names for this topic, but I decided to keep it this. And I'm using two words that are kind of interchangeable, but also have slightly different meanings. So it's called stories that stick, using narratives to make design land, right? And I'll tell you a lot about what I have learned through my own experience of being in the design field, multiple projects, conversations with people from different levels, different backgrounds and practices. And these are my lived experiences, which is why I like it so much. Before anything, my name's Chaitra. You can also call me Chai. I have like a medium, short, long version of my name. The shortest is the easiest, so you can call me that. Um, I went to design school like most of us, and learned it through experience almost 15 years ago, and I loved it. I'm from India, from the south of India. There's a joke there that if you throw a stone, it'll fall either on an engineer, a coconut tree, or something else. So I grew up doing engineering just like everybody else, but then my heart was not in it. So I switched over to design, and I felt like I changed my religion, and it was great. I loved it. I loved every moment of my design school. But what I didn't realize then is that I wasn't just using design as a tool at work. For me, it became a part of life. Everything I saw, I was like, what can I, like, what process, which part of the process can I use to solve this or figure this out? So for me, it's a mindset, right? It's not just a step-by-step process, it's a mindset. I live it, and that's why I'm so passionate about design and service design and all different parts of design. I started off as an interaction designer. My background is in industrial design, but I somehow gravitated towards service and strategy, which is where I live now. Yeah, and for me, what makes me tick is if anything my team or I are designing, if it can make somebody's life a little better, it can be the most boring, ugly looking tool or process, but if it makes their life a little better and they're less frustrated when they go home that day, my job's done. So that's why I show up every day. Thank you for having here. I work at a company called Design It. I'm the service design practice lead for our region. And I've been in that company for 10 years. We are part of a big IT conglomerate, so a lot of IT work, but it's still fun. Okay, so what have I seen in my work, and I'm hoping this will resonate with a lot of you, is that our biggest challenge is making design truly land, right? We have great artifacts. We create good-looking designs and screens and journey maps and blueprints and everything. But sometimes they don't land. You know, they're there in a slide, in a deck, in a PDF. If you've printed it on the wall in some office, people will love it when you're sharing it with them. They'll nod their heads. They'll walk with you through the map and everything. But then 3 months later, when you try and figure out what really happened to it, sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. It's just there because it's either too complicated for them to understand, they don't know how to make it actionable, or something is not really working. And then you start to wonder what really happened. Like, we did everything right. I did user, talk to users, did contextual interviews, desk research, all of that good thing. So it's still sitting in a deck. So then you start to ask yourself, maybe you didn't really connect to who you were supposed to connect. And maybe they weren't somebody who comes from your background, right? Like either the leadership or the clients, not everybody is a designer, so they may not understand exactly what you're saying. So what I believe you have to touch or connect with is their human side. And how you would do it is if you could tell them a simple human story, right? A human narrative, and connect with them at that level, then they might sit up straight. They might come forward and say, oh, wait, this has happened to me, or I've heard this somewhere in my team. Somebody's told the same thing to me. And that's where you feel like you can connect with them. You can make them want to invest their time, effort, and money in taking this forward. And in my experience, like, this is a very simple tool, but it's the most underutilized. And a lot of other fun tools like the journey map and screens and blueprints, they're great tools. I'm not saying they're not, and we need them. We absolutely need them. Or data-driven research, all of that is great. But if you can't connect to who you need to connect to, whether it's your client or your executive or whoever, in the human way, then it doesn't go anywhere. And why do we think narratives stick or stories stick, right? Growing up, for me, stories were how I bargained with my parents. So if I had to do something, they had to tell me a story. If I had to do a bigger task, they had to tell me a bigger story or more stories. So I grew up like that. And when I studied design school and learned that everything could be told in a narrative format, like, I found gold. So I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, why is it? First of all, it's one of the oldest and the most common communication tools, and it cuts across culture, right? It's not just in my culture or your culture. It's pretty much in every culture. It's the most ancient tool, and how you pass on information from one generation or from one team or one group of people to the other. So our human brains are wired for stories. And it's not just fluff, but there's actually science behind it. When you tell a story and you're able to connect with the person, I think you have oxytocin that gets generated in the brain, and that's a trust hormone, right? So you start to trust the other person, and you're like, oh, wait, I can relate to you. That means you're saying something that's making sense to me. So maybe there's something in it. So I will hear you, I will pay attention to you, and maybe hopefully do what you're asking me to do or work with you in the same field. So there's science behind it. It's not just fluff, and it's not a soft tool. It's absolutely not a soft tool. In my own experience, I have seen it land so many places. You can tell, you can have a great journey map, and people will be interested. I'm not saying they won't. They'll listen to you, but it won't stick with them. It won't stay, right? After they leave the room, the journey map stays there, and they're going outside. But if you tell a story, if you can, weave it in the form of a narrative, they will take it back with them. And that's what you want. You don't want people to nod their heads and like what you're sharing, but you want them to take it back with you. For that, it has to be an impactful and emotional or an empathetic way of telling the whole story. Does that make sense? And what does narrative do? Like, is it just a story? No, there are like three main things. I've tried to simplify here, but I'll talk a little more about it. First of all, it cuts through a lot of complexity. Uh, the journey map is a step-by-step way of how you would describe a user's actions. Blueprint has more swim lanes and more data, which is great, but this will cut through all of that. It will tell the story in the simplest form, and then you can back it up with the other tools. You can back it up with more data. You can back it up with more details. And I'm sure that will work, and that's needed. But this kind of cuts through the complexity. So that's the most important thing. And it brings the user's frustration or pain point or whatever it is in the front. Second, it creates alignment. You don't need to know anything to tell a story, right? That person can be from any background, does not need to know anything about design. They could be a project manager, developer, doesn't matter who it is. A story is common language. Everybody understands that. So if you tell the story of a frustrated client or a frustrated customer, everybody gets it. So you can use it to create alignment across multiple teams. And then it helps to clarify and unlock conversations. Sometimes you end up in situations where you don't know how to go, or you have choices, but you're not sure which one to take. But if you can tell an effective narrative of a situation, you can actually unlock those conversations and clarify the choices. Like, why are you making this decision? You can do that through narratives. And again, there are two positions in our approach, the design approach, where you can tell a different narrative. And I'll tell you the, the positive and the negative, or my experience of both. So the as is the current script, the script that's happening now, which is simple, right? I'm sure all of you know it. It's understanding the reality. I tried to renew my passport earlier this year, and good Lord, it took me 25 days because I had to first get enough motivation to do it, and then it didn't happen in one session, right? I would go there, I would keep putting the same password, it would log me out. It was a tedious thing. Then I had to call up my friend. I said, you're good at this, why don't you do it? So I motivated her to do it for me. But it was basically very painful. What actually should have taken me 45 minutes or an hour took me a lot of time, a lot of energy, frustration, all of that. So this is your current as-is story, right? It's also called a service narrative sometimes. It's a clear story of what's working, what's not working, how your user or customer is feeling at that point, and what their journey is. It's pretty simple to understand. And what it really does is, and this is my experience, when researchers or the design team is learning about the user's experience through conversations with them, through desk research, they feel a lot of empathy for the user. So they're very motivated to do something good for them. But that kind of remains with the design team, which is why sometimes I feel like the downstream teams do it with a little more detachment. I won't be the judge of good or bad of that. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But if everybody was as motivated as a team that actually does the research on the ground, or you could connect them to the user in the same way and help have them feel the same empathy for the user, I feel like the motivation would be higher, just like it is for the team that's on the ground. So you can uncover real pain points and foster empathy across teams, and that's my favorite thing. So when you're able to tell the story of how frustrated this user was, it really helps everybody to be as motivated to come up with an interesting solution as it does with the design team. I remember my team and I were doing a project for an extremely, I don't know how to say this, domain. And we were trying to understand the employee's perspective. After like talking to this person for 45 minutes, she looked at us and she was like, oh my God, I feel like you're my therapist. Nobody had asked her how painful it was to use this internal application. I'm kidding you not, it looked like it was from 1990. And there are a lot of these applications that are internal tools, utilitarian tools that exist in all organizations, not one or two. So it was really good. When we were able to tell that story, it changed the conversation, right? Instead of just redesigning the visual interface, they wanted us to redo the whole process. So it was really fun. So that's the current state. The to-be story. This is actually the hero. Everybody knows this, right? That's the envisioning the future, the North Star. A compelling story of how the service will be or how it should work in the ideal future. These are very, very powerful to guide teams, to make sure that everybody's inspired and aligned and everybody's walking towards the same goal. The future state story is generally what gets a lot of attention. In my own experience over the past 10, 12 years, I've created very few as-is stories versus the future story. But I'll tell you in the future slides why we should do both, why I strongly believe we should do both. And now whenever I get a chance, I push to do both and add that as a part of when we're planning a project. So what I want to do next is actually walk you through 2 case studies from my work. One, which I can share the name of the client. The second, I'm not allowed to, but I've white labeled it. And I'm really passionate about both of these project examples, so I'll walk you through them. And then we'll go through how we constructed a future state story for both of them, and what were the differences, and what elements we kept in mind when we were creating that. Does that make sense so far? Okay, great. Okay, I hope many or few of you know about this company. This is City Harvest. It was my favorite project over the past 5 years. They're New York City's first and largest food rescue organization. They rescue food from multiple, grocery stores, restaurants around the city. They've been around for 40 plus years, and they feed almost 1.2 million New Yorkers every year or every month, I think. So they rescue surplus food from bakeries, grocery stores, farms, and everything. They get everything in one place, and they have their fleet of trucks that actually redistribute it back to soup kitchens and pantries and other places across the 5 boroughs. They have around 400 plus partners, and they make sure that the food that they send back is tailored to the need of that specific partner, right? Some partners are small, some are larger, et cetera. And they're wonderful people, very passionate, very driven. It was great to work with these stakeholders. Their biggest challenge was that these partners who would receive the rescued food from them felt so obligated and felt so grateful that they didn't want to tell them if even a small part of the service was not good, right? Like the truck arrived late, 2 hours late, so somebody had to wait. And they didn't want to complain. They were like, no, we don't want to do that. They're being so good to us and supporting the community, so we don't want to complain about it. So we heard this over and over again, but what happened really is that because they weren't getting critical feedback, they weren't able to improve the process at the place where it was breaking. So they approached us, we had conversations, and we're like, how can you help us improve the feedback process? So we're like, oh, great, this is like a really good problem with a really good cause. So the question that we put across to both of us was, how might City Harvest improve its feedback process to build a stronger, more open communication with its network of partners? And we were very happy. We spoke to a lot of people. Uh, so this was like a typical approach. We did discovery and concept development and validation, spoke to stakeholders, resource plan, qualitative interviews, which was the most fun part. Went to a lot of soup kitchens to try and understand their situation and everything. And I think it was very heartwarming because everybody worked with the same amount of passion and for their communities. Then we used that information and facilitated a co-ideation with City Harvest. And then we came up with 3 narrative concepts. There was no space in this to actually design the interface or redesign it. They had their own design team that would do it, but they just wanted ideas before they went ahead and created something or just improved the existing app, right? And then we also validated it. So the other great thing with narratives is it's relatively low effort when you compare it to developing something, but you can use that to get quick feedback. So it's very low effort in that way, but that feedback is very important, and we were able to improve our concepts and go back with the final one. So these are just some images from the massive mirror board. I'm just going to click through them. And this was our research insights. So every group of research insights, we had a few how might we or opportunity statements that we used to then ideate. We did like a couple of rounds of ideation and prioritization. And then we landed with a lot of concepts that we combined and created 3 large narratives. I'm going to walk you through one of them. Actually, I'll walk you through the first 2 slides. You can read the next 2 slides. And I have some pointers that you can look at, which we kept in mind when we were designing these narratives. So let's take a look at the future state. OK, so there were 5 pieces of narrative that we created. And what you see on the right side are the things that we kept in mind to create them, right? For example, frame the narrative in the first person. So you want, if we are sharing this with a partner and it's them who are going to be using this, so we wanted to create it in first person. Second is have a clear protagonist, like who's this story or who's this narrative going to be, who's going to be using this or walking through this. And keep the setting realistic. Don't make it too futuristic that people can't relate to it. Again, there's a place and time for it. If you're doing a future state project that's 10 years from now, maybe you're thinking up of technologies or ideas that don't exist. So there's a time and place for that. Of course, it has to be grounded in research, right? Identify moments that matter. These are my favorite things. There has to be an emotional arc, otherwise people won't relate to it. And present a possibility. Use natural and human language, no jargons, nothing hefty, no acronyms. And it's great to use a combination of words, illustrations, and images so people can relate. And end with a prompt. And keep in mind the time frame and the flow and the context where this narrative is sitting in. I'm going to read maybe the first or the second one, and I'll let you read the next 3. So this was for the partners for City Harvest. So it was written for them. So City Harvest has announced a relaunch of their Harvest Hub app, and they had an app that was a connection between the network partners and the company. You see announcements. By you, it's the partner. You see announcements and information about your upcoming delivery with the option to track and give feedback. There are some key resources linked, including a reference list split by various agency concerns like volunteers, finances, and food safety, with the contact information for who to reach out to for each issue. You're prompted to confirm your contact preferences and confirm that the default setting of alerts on the app are sufficient for now. So that means they obviously had an option to change it. This app seems like a great central spot to keep track of your day-to-day interactions with City Harvest. You're excited to see how it helps your work with them. And the 3 things were the things that we captured feedback from them. So you notice that we're hitting either most of them or all of them in this. Does that resonate with you? It's framed in first person. There's a clear protagonist, right? It's a realistic setting. Um, you don't really see the grounded in research, but the pain points were converted into, opportunities. There are moments, you know, I think moments that matter will come in the next one. The emotional arc also is probably in the next one. There's a possibility, simple language, format is word and illustrations, and there's a time frame and flow. Let me go to the next one. So after they've opened the app and everything, at the end of the week, at the start of the week, the Harvest Hub app alerts you of a question for the week. How does winter weather make your client experience different from summer weather? You're curious, so you open it up and you see other agencies have replied. One of them catches your eye. Snow can make the curb difficult to see, so clients don't know where to stand in line, and even they're tripping and falling. You can also give it a 1+ star to indicate how you deal with this issue. And then in the afternoon, you're alerted that a few people have replied to the question of the week, response you liked. So one person replied that they found curb flags that work well. So you're also, there's the whole ecosystem that you're thinking about, right? It's not just your network, your whatever food, soup kitchen or pantry, but there are others in place. One person replied that they found curb flags that worked well for them. And the City Harvest rep chimes in to say that another agency has a surplus. So you're connecting different people or teams. And then you can ping him, and luckily a few of them are left, so one will be coming your way. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So you can again pick that at least some of them or all of them are used in this. So I'll just switch to the next one, and I won't hold this for too long. Give it a quick read, see if you can identify some or more of the elements that we used to create the narrative. And the way I look at the elements on the right is like when we do heuristic evaluation for UX, right? You have to keep this in mind because these are base. Beyond this, you can obviously build a much more fantastical story, but these are at least the basics that you have to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to switch to the next one. And the way we use this for validation is after each story piece, we would make the partner actually read it because it was written for them. And then we ask them, like, what did you think about the planned quarterly check-in? Like, how did that make you feel? If this were to actually be a real app and somebody would actually ask you about it, like, what would you think? What do you feel about it? So we got good feedback. Some of them resonated, some of them didn't. So out of the 3 concepts that we created, we picked and chose the ones that really resonated with them and combined them and added more things to it and created a final concept that we presented to City Harvest later. And the last one. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I can, if you're curious to read, I can share it again. So I should have added more pauses in my presentation, learning for next time. But what did you think so far? Did that resonate with you? Do you still think it's too fluffy and too soft, or is it making, yeah? Mm. Yeah. 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 The next example is that, where you're saying, oh, like Alex is doing something, something, something. Yeah. But I think what's important in that is you have to make it as human as possible. So there's a name, there's a certain personality that you attach to it. You can use a persona that you've generated for the project, make them a little more real. And whoever's reading it, if you're using it for validation, You can ask them to switch out the name if you know the user. In many cases, we've done that. We've switched it out with the name of the actual person who's using it to do the validation for us. So it feels more real. But if you're presenting it to a group of clients, then you can use another name. So they still feel like it's a real person that could belong to one of their teams. Does that answer your question? Okay. Oh, yeah.
So now just wondering if
Yeah.
you agree in advance with the client that this will be the format of your delivery, or it was more like, oh, we're gonna do research and then we're gonna have a workshop and then we're gonna present the outcomes and then you presented the outcomes in this format.
I work for an agency. We have to prove ourselves every single time in every project. So we have lots of deliverable examples, and we say, like, for each activity, we have to show them what it could look like.
Yeah.
It will not look like the same thing because every time we try to keep it bespoke and, make it's meant for them. So the City Harvest story narrative would be an example we would provide to say, if we were to create narratives because it makes sense in this project, it could look like this. It might look slightly different. So we show one or two examples.
And then another question I have, and I did work for an agency before, so I can resonate with that. But and sometimes we did some little surprises where, yeah, we're gonna show you a journey map, but then it was in a format of in a more narrative format, and that landed very well. So that's why I asked the question. Yeah. The other question I had, like, did you ever take those moments or those narratives that you just shown and then broke them down into different service interactions?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I wanted to share this story because unfortunately, a lot of the clients that I work with, I can't share their work, right? They're either under NDA or something. So we've done this in various formats. This one was fairly simple. We didn't go beyond this because this is all they wanted. But for another large, actually a tech company, we created this, and the output after the feedback, we actually converted it into user flows and then screens and all of that. The next example that I'm going to show you actually is of an interface, because what I wanted, and this was great feedback from David when I shared the topic, and of course, Lynn and Yasmi too. Narratives are not just for service design, right? They can be used across any practice in design, but the idea is that you can relate, or you make the story or the current state or future state narrative relatable to whoever the stakeholders in the front. So it could be for a UX project, a strategy project, a service design project. It fits well in a service design project, but I've done it in different projects of different that require different kinds of outputs. So it applies to everything, and it gets more and more powerful depending on how you present the narrative. So again, I wanted to debunk some myths. It's definitely, they're not just fluff, right? They're strategic evidence-based tools. They're underutilized. This is what I've seen in my career. When I was in grad school, this was like a big thing. Every project had at least one or more narratives. But as I started working in the real world, I started noticing less and less of those. And it's how convincing can you be, either with your own team or with the client team, on the power of it. Do you understand it well enough to convince them? That's what I've figured out. So they can actually drive tangible change, because at the end of the day, if the stakeholder is not buying what you're selling, the solution or the design, then it's just going to sit on the deck. Second, and I'm guilty of this too, understanding that current state is crucial before envisioning the future. In a lot of my projects, we don't have an opportunity to do the current state narrative because it's expensive, takes time, we don't have the effort, resources, all of that. So we somehow skip it. We create a current state user journey, right? That's the max we will go to, and then do research insights and all of that. But every time we've created a current state narrative or a service narrative, it has landed so well. For the next example that I'm going to show you, I, I couldn't figure out, I was telling Yasmin, I couldn't find the current state narrative, so I'm showing you the future state, but we actually created it. We were sitting in a large room. It was a 3.5-hour research readout. The CTO was there. They had time to sit with us for 3 hours, which was great. And we were telling the story of one of their employees and how frustrated they were to use an internal tool and how they lost their, like an entire day figuring stuff out. And he literally stood up and he said, okay, let's just, we were only supposed to validate the solution, right? Whatever was there. We had to just tell him that it's very close. Your existing solution is like 90% there. You just need to make small changes. But we found out that it's not 90% there. It's actually probably 50% or less. So we told the story of an employee. He stood up and he said, let's create from scratch, and walked out. And then what ensued was 3 more months of figuring out how to do it from scratch. But this is just one example. This has happened many, many times. So the current state narrative is as important as the future state for multiple reasons, in multiple different ways. So what I have now, and I'm sorry I can't tell, but I'm pretty sure you might be able to figure out who the client is, but it is a big accounting firm. They're one of the largest professional services in the world, and they work with businesses of all shapes and sizes. And they help with tax consulting, audits, like everybody else. So they came to us and they said, we have these set of IT processes or tools or utilitarian tools internally, and they're not great. And every time somebody has to use it, we get a lot of complaints. They call our internal support team every time they have a little problem, and it's making it very expensive for us. So can you fix the tool, right? That's what was asked. Just evaluate the tool, and if there are some small fixes, just tell us. But when we did the research and shared the current state narrative, he said, design the whole thing. So we're like, okay. So that's what we did. Example of basic ID services. I'm guessing all of you are aware, but in case it doesn't make sense. So like onboarding a new employee, right? You have these steps that you have to do. Either you have a platform or a tool or something like that. Or your machine has a hardware or software issue, right? It's not working. Your cat spilled coffee on it, and you have no idea what to do. Or you need a new accessory, like your mouse broke or something. And sometimes, if you've been in the company for long enough, your laptop ages. So there's a refresh process for that. So those things. So what we did was, again, a pretty standard process. But of course, it was tailored to their needs. So we had conversations with stakeholders, did qualitative interviews with employees, and it had to be for one geography. So the plan was, we'll do a pilot for one location, right? We'll see how effective the solution is, build it, and then sell it to other locations. So we created insights, a current state journey map, the current state narrative that I was telling you about, and presented it. This is where the project was supposed to end for us. Then what happened is we decided they wanted us to do new. So we had to actually create the future state process flows. So that's also something I think service designers can do, not just create user journeys, but can recreate processes, right? And we've done a lot of that, and I think it's fun. Then created wireframes and screen mockups, and created a future state narrative because they wanted to use this narrative to sell the solution to other teams in other countries. And then, of course, after it was approved and we did the changes, we went into design, production, and development. Okay, let's take a quick look. And I deliberately didn't put the capsules for this. I'm hoping you either remember or you can identify. And to your point, this is in third person because they had to tell the story to other teams. I can read out a few, and then you can probably make out the others. I mean, you can read the rest. So Alicia is a senior consultant based out of New York. Because her role is client-facing, she has a busy schedule and is often on the road. By the way, this project is about 5 years old. So we had somebody in the team who could create beautiful illustrations, but you can also use humans or anything that's available to you right now. Humans is the easiest and the simplest. I think we've used it many times. They were eligible for a new laptop, and they're a power user, And she's been using the machine for a couple of years, and it's beginning to slow down. So fortunately, the system detected it. So there's something, like a future state of this, right? Currently, it doesn't detect. So the system detected it, and it triggered a new laptop for her. So she gets a notification, and she's like, great, I don't have to do it. There's somebody doing it proactively for me, or the system is doing it proactively for me. So gets very excited. She's like, what a great way to start my day. And then she goes through the whole process of selecting and curating options that are available for her. She can also compare the bundles, right? And then she digs deeper. There are more options and choices for her to select from. Um, she can pick and choose. So again, all of these um, features were based on something that didn't exist today. So we were able to relate to it very easily. And then she schedules for a pickup. And just a few minutes after she gets the notification about being eligible for, she's whatever, eligible for the refresh, she's done with her order. And then, how the process goes further. Like she gets notified about the process, about the progress, and she's eager to get her new laptop and peripherals. When we compared this with the current state narrative, it was such a drastic difference that it was very easy to see all the plus points. Again, this was one flow with very limited number of screens. The actual screens were double or triple the number. But we used this as an example to show the team how they could, sell this. And then after that, you can show them the production-ready screens and the process design and all of that fun stuff. So finally, she gets a notification that her order is ready. And then she goes and picks it up, right? And she's feeling happy that it was effortless, and double checks the assigned laptop locker. And then when she gets there, she enters the one-time code and finally gets a new laptop. And she's feeling happy and walking away with a new laptop. In the previous or the original process, it was not this simple. It was a lot of back and forth, calling people, not sure where it is, figuring out if it's lost in mail and stuff. And we were just entering the pandemic, so people had no idea how to work remote at that time, right? And so there was a lot of confusion. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm not good with that. Okay, I'm going to pause here before I go here. So this was an example. I wanted to take two examples, one from a pure service design project with limited number of UI, UX, and one from a project that was very heavy on UX and UI, which obviously had some upfront research. But I hope it makes sense that you can use it for more than one kind of project. Okay, but there are places where it doesn't work. So let's just figure out like what are those, what you have to keep in mind when you're actually using narratives. So when do they work? They work they work best when you're trying to understand complexity. I think I read somewhere, I think this was an old research, that the human brain at any one point can't handle more than 7 groups of information. So if you're presenting more than that in one shot to a person, it'll not stick, right? They will just forget it. They will hear it, probably understand it that minute, but it doesn't stick with them. But when you're telling a story and you're trying to keep it crisp and short, they will probably retain it, also because the fact that you're able to relate to them. It helps in aligning stakeholders. It drives innovation because people actually feel like they want to do something about it, not just hear and walk away from it saying, yeah, I get there are pain points and there are challenges. And it guides development teams too. So the whole empathy thing that I was talking to you about, that it doesn't have to stick with just the upfront team. You can actually share the story across teams. When it doesn't work is when it's very, very hypothetical. You have no research to guide it. You're just either using ChatGPT or you're just making it up. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it's not very sticky if you don't have real data or whether it's from qualitative research or quantitative, either one, right? And when you don't have a clear vision You're just making something up. If we've worked on projects where sometimes it's way into the future, right? Speculative future kind of things. So if the term is very far ahead in the future, maybe it may not work. And static organizational culture, if the, we always try to assess the change readiness of the organization. And of course, when it's used in isolation, that never works. If you're just trying to solve this one little thing in isolation, it doesn't work. Does that make sense so far? Questions? Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
So on static
Oh,
organizational
yeah.
culture there, that's something, so I in past in consulting, we would use this, like these narratives and envisioning and illustration, and there was like a license to do so because it was built into the project plan. We made like the client agreed to do that. But it's something that I've seen a lot less of ever since moving in-house, because you're like with product teams and they're on a sprint cycle, and then and you're like, hey guys, I want to make a bunch of comic strip, which is that's how they see it. But obviously we know that it has like really big narrative power to compel people. But I mean, like, I love envisioning, but I've had a really hard time selling it in an in-house context, because to your point earlier, it's not fluff.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like you have to do it side of desk and then be like, hey guys, look, this tells the story, and then they get it. And then, but the problem is then you move on to another product team that doesn't understand the value. So I'm just curious what you think about that, like how you might navigate such a, like the readiness for this type of thing. Because if you look at a service blueprint, or if you look at a process map, those have this feeling of seeming like more robust because they have more data and they look like a complex document, and therefore maybe you have done work. But when you look at an illustration, people are fearful of it because are you guys artists or something? So just curious what you think.
Yeah, we'll come to you. So I'll be very honest, I have very less experience working in-house. I worked for a few years in one in-house company a long time ago. So maybe your information is obviously much more recent. I totally get what you're saying. It's not easy. So one of my teams, we had an embedded team in a product company. Like 4 of my team members were there. So this was the struggle that I heard from them on my weekly check-ins. They're like, they don't want to do the design process. They just want to jump directly into the design. I don't even know where it's coming from, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, calm down. So I get you. It's not easy, but, and I'm not saying blueprints are not helpful, right? They're super helpful. And sometimes I feel like the more complex it looks, the more valid it looks. And I think that's, again, a mindset you have to cut. You have to somehow carve time out. And what I like about the second story, and I share this a lot, is that I kind of tell them that, imagine, so these were just mock-ups. They're not pixel perfect, by the way, right? They're not production-ready screens. They didn't take our team too long to develop. But if you can use them for validation and catch something, like imagine the effort that it takes when it's actually developed, and then you're doing validation. So if you somehow can convert and find an ROI for it, I'm not a fan of it in the field of design, but that's just what we all do.
Yeah. And I think there's a big difference between what we need as the sausage makers and what they need as the sausage, right? Like they don't need to see the blueprint. Like the blueprints are great, but that's a lot of sausage making.
Yeah.
And that they just don't care about. That is something that what you showed is something that they're going to care about.
Yeah.
And that they're going to connect to quickly.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've seen is if somebody in the executive level has to share this with another team, right? You think they can walk them through the blueprint like we can? No, absolutely not. Sometimes even we forget what we fill into that blueprint, right? I've seen that so many times. This is an easy way, if they're trying to sell this internally, right? we have projects where we work with a team, because we're an agency, right? We work with a team and build something so they can convince their executives to actually work on this. So their narratives are very helpful because it's easy. Everybody gets it. You don't need to have a design degree to tell a narrative. You have and the script is there. You read through it, people will get it. So I think you have to like attack it from different angles. Like maybe the ROI will work sometimes. Sometimes I've asked my teams to just create something really rough and dirty. Doesn't have to be perfect. If people don't like illustrations, don't create illustrations. Just have the narrative and yeah. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's
Yeah.
like, is it about de-risking
Yes.
the innovation process? Like that's my one framing. But to your point, like, which is really interesting, it gives the people that maybe inherit the work down the line, it gives them a narrative that they can then talk to. They don't have to like decipher a blueprint.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very cool.
And cost of development. If you know their hourly cost, just multiply it and tell them like the cost of development versus upfront validation is very inexpensive. You had a question?
It's more like a comment.
Oh, yeah.
But I think you covered that with the sausage. Is it David that's talking about sausages?
Thank you, David.
Thank you for this. So I think it's a matter of exposure to your point, because again, like at executive level in the big organizations, any single product design team, they provide data and they provide journey maps of different forms, so they kind of chew this data on a daily basis. And so how do you prioritize? And so at that level, a story like this, a narrative like this can be a bit more sticky. And so I think it's a matter of the type of exposure at the right time. I want to like challenge a little bit the lacking of user data point. I think because of that also, sometimes executives really want to understand individual user stories versus like looking at data on the table. And I think that's when this becomes very valuable, and then you back it up with research if you need to kind of
composite stories, right?
Yeah.
Composite narratives that are coming not from direct research, or you're just
anecdotal basically. We spoke with 5 users.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't make it up. It comes from, maybe you visit, like I work for a big bank, so we visit branches and we see what bankers do and what customers do, and then we go back and maybe in executive meetings, like, oh, that's what we observed. It's like 5 people, so it's not enough to start an initiative. But then it's really painful maybe to see some things, and then they react to those narratives.
Yeah, I hear you. We've done that. I'm not saying we haven't done it. It's just like, if you like, sometimes we were working for a healthcare company where it was all internal, so we were allowed to show the images and everything, so we could tell them, your team told this to us, so then it landed better. But in some cases, yes, composite stories, anecdotal, they're also helpful. At the end of the day, like you were saying, anything that sticks, that's the point. We don't want people to walk away from the meeting not remembering anything, right? We want it to stick. And the way to stick a story, to make sure your design lands, is that you can connect with the stakeholder or the audience in the room. I'm sure there are still some skeptics. I've seen this a lot, right? You'll hear everything, we're like, yeah, I like it, but still a little fluffy. I can't explain to comic strips. I've heard that before too. Are you an artist? I've heard all of those. So they kind of simplify. They cut, again, the same thing, right? And something that I keep coming back to that I really like is, it also, everything in the world of design is, you have to look at it through the eyes of a system. We don't want to look at it in isolation. If you look at it in isolation, you're only solving something here. You have no idea where the mess is coming from. You have no idea what mess it's creating. You're not doing anybody a favor. So even when you look at it from a systems perspective, your story has a life to it. There's a timeline to it. And it's connecting different people. It's connecting different groups. So it's helpful to do that. They help test the future scenario like we saw. They expose cultural norms and fears in a very simple way, without alarming people, without causing anxiety or alarm. helps build empathy, conflicting views. My favorite thing is the whole thing in isolation, where you're not looking at things in isolation. I feel like the more we do things in using a systems mindset, it helps better when you. That's been my experience as I've gravitated like or graduated towards creating strategies. You cannot look at anything in isolation. It's not helpful because it will create a problem somewhere else. So that way, narratives are helpful for that too. I'm going to pause here and revisit the first activity that we did. So with the same partner or the group of people that you were talking to, now that you kind of have an idea, and I can pull those buttons back up if you want. Uh, for 2 minutes now, imagine the story that you heard from your partner, right? Imagine a future state. Of course, you only have data from one person. It'll be skewed. That's fine. And tell the story of what the experience should have been like. What would the ideal version look like? And you can just take a few minutes if you want. And if you want, I can pull it back up and think about it. Maybe write some notes, and then you can tell it back to them. That might just help you figure out how to create this. Does that make sense? This is the last part of the Okay, let's. What did you think about it? How did it? Hopefully, that was what we were intending to feel. Not frustrated even in the future state. um, it's funny. What did you notice about your partner's reaction when you were telling them the future state? Like, were they nodding their head in agreement relating to what you were saying? Um, were there any other takeaways? Like, feel free to just raise your hand or just tell me. Was there something that you learned that maybe I didn't share? Something new that the team? Oh yeah, go for it.
It's helpful to do priming very early. Oh, sorry. I thought it was helpful to do priming of the story very early,
Uh-huh.
and then
What do you mean by priming?
just basically like this idea of starting something, like setting up expectations that
Yes.
we're going to revisit this later.
Right, right.
And so, to your point about having artifacts after each activity, right? Like saying, okay, we're finishing this phase, and this is the milestone. This is the thing that we're going to be relating to later,
Right.
and getting people to absorb it and take time to reflect on it a little bit. And that can be days, weeks, whatever it is. But then they have a familiarity with it later, so it makes it a little bit easier to kind of accept the solution, right? There's this
Yeah.
kind of nice full circle effect,
Yeah.
like you're coming back to it.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think one thing I noticed, it really helps to know the story in order to get to the right solution.
Yeah.
Because my partner, she knew exactly the pain points that I
Yeah.
sort of faced, and she was able to come up with more relevant solutions, and it lands better.
Yeah, yeah. Grounding in research. That's absolutely correct. Did you?
I noticed that it was a lot harder than I expected, like because I was thinking about your checklist in my head, and I actually really liked the first person narrative, because I think even though I would never be approving food from a like in a soup kitchen, or I could be, but I felt like I was in that process. So I tried to retell mine with you as the first person, and then I was trying to go through the other things, and I realized that although you only had a few sentences, there's a lot of work that goes into that tiny square cube to capture it all and then make it very efficient. And so I was like, oh, this is actually harder than I realized, trying to do it on the spot. But that was my observation.
I know. I have had to convince clients why it takes this long. They're like, it's just a blurb. Just one illustration. Like, how long should it take? You should be able to do it all in one day. I'm like, no, have you tried telling a future state? It's not, especially if it's rooted in real pain points and real research and you're trying to find a solution. So yeah, it's helpful to, as a part of ideation sessions, oh, maybe this responds to your question. As a part of like co-ideation sessions, we sometimes, and because stakeholders are a part of it, right? You're ideating with your clients. We make this a part of the activity. We're like, oh, why don't you come up with a future state? And they're like, wait, it's difficult. It's not that easy. You know, it takes time. So then they appreciate the effort that it takes for the design team to come up with it. Because we're in the design agency, again, I'm speaking from that perspective, we use every project as a moment for helping people who are not familiar with the design process to understand the nuances and how valuable it is and how long it takes, what's the effort involved, so that the next time when we're again trying to either convince them of the value of the artifacts or any other client, we can like reuse that. So thank you for sharing. Okay, this was the last part. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently. I definitely should add a few more elements of interactivity in these meetings. But if you have any questions from me, you can either ask now, maybe one or two, David, or I'm going to be here. You can come up to me and ask me as well.
Or maybe you can join us at the after wrap and continue the conversation down at No Bar at the Standard Hotel. This is not a paid endorsement. Yeah, so thank you, Chai, for your time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and seriously, there's going to be a bunch of us going down. It's like 3 blocks from here, down the downtown, down the street. So please join us, and we will see you the next time. Stay tuned to the meetup. And what have we got coming up?
So August, we tend to have a bit of a break. Some people are away on holidays and such.
We might do drinks.
But we might do a drinks, maybe more of a casual meeting somewhere. So yeah. Otherwise, maybe you've got a talk that you'd like to share with everyone. And then in September, we're still confirming everything, but we're looking at a collaboration with Frog in their offices. And then I think we're looking later the year, Hope with Parsons and Google. There's a little, yeah, it'd be really cool. So a little speckle of interest there, but yeah, keep an eye out what's got coming.
And then we'll get to the holiday moment.
Yeah, we'll play Scrabble again or something. But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Appreciate you coming out.